Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here for a special episode of the Friday Night Movie Club, episode 84. And tonight we're talking about an old classic that has gotten a new group of people together. As you can see here, Rick and Rob look a little bit different from what they normally do when they're here on the show. That's because they're not here this week. I'm joined here tonight with our special guest, Nerdigans, all the way on the sunny side of California. How you doing today, Nerdigans?
I'm trying not to die from the over 100-degree heat. And
I mean, I'll tell you this much. Here in Georgia right now, this whole week until basically next Thursday, it's going to be about 95 and humid, just straight through. So
I will never live on the East Coast. Never.
Yeah. And I just got my AC fixed a couple days ago, too. So that was swell, having to live a couple of days without that. So, but outside that, also joining us somewhere on the sunny side of California is a good buddy, Eddy Brock. How you doing tonight, Eddie? Is Eddie there, or he might have stepped out? Well, we'll get back to Eddie here in a second. But outside of that, we're doing a very special episode here because basically I finally got back to watching an old, I guess I can't say old, it came out last year, but it was a Digimon movie that came out in Japan that only just now came out to the United States dubbed over the course of the last year. This is Digimon Adventure 2, The Beginning. And the reason why this was interesting, the reason why I wanted to do a movie night on this one is that this is, when you look at the whole conjuncture of Digimon over the last, how long has it been now? Like 25 years since season 1 started. So we're at like a quarter of a century at this point. And if you guys remember, me and Nerdigans did a retro wave roughly about a year ago talking about Digimon season 2 and a couple of other Digimon seasons. And 02 was the one that, surprisingly enough, I had made the proclamation that outside of Frontier, which I think is the one that everyone pretty much hates up at this point, I think that Digimon 02 is probably the worst Digimon series to date. And it has to do with the fact that when you go back and you watch that series, I don't know what happened creatively halfway during that series, but it was like there were several plot lines that they set up in the first half that got absolutely no payoff in the second half whatsoever. It's almost as if somehow they shot half the thing and then there was like creative changes halfway in and the whole thing turned out to be a mess. And outside of that, outside of like a couple of movies here and there, some non-canon movies over the course of 20 something years, we really haven't heard much of the 02 cast. Now, even though I have issues with 02, I still like the two core characters of Davis and Ken. Everyone else I can live without. Like, you could Thanos snap Cody out of the universe at this point. I don't think anyone really cares about him too much. Yoli, TK, like, nobody needs those guys. It's all about Davis and Ken because they're the most two comparing story characters in there. However, like I said, we just haven't seen anything from them. And over the course of the last few years, we've had so many series come back with the Adventure Kids. We've had Digimon Try. We've had the 2020 reboot. We have a series of movies over the past few years. However, there's really been no mention of this group of characters for quite a while. And even with, I think it was Digimon Try, at the very end, they mentioned that, oh, yeah, by the way, all the O2 kids just happened to be kidnapped off screen. And no one really knows how they got kidnapped or what happened to them.
Yeah,
And we're
they
not
were
going to bother
kidnapped
to
at the
explain.
start of Try. That's what it was. They were kidnapped at the start of Try, and no one knew where they were.
Were they even? Because I remember watching like the first like episode of that, and I don't even think there was any real reference to them outside of the fact that they had gotten kidnapped. And it wasn't like there was a sort of effort to try to figure out where the kids were at that point.
Yeah, there was no effort trying to figure out where they were, but yeah, they were kidnapped at the start of Try, and they mentioned it, but like there was no effort at all.
It was bad. It was really, really bad. So here we had a movie revolving these kids, and I guess this is supposed to be kind of like a last hurrah for the O2 kids, because the last time I checked, we're probably not going to get like a 2020 reboot of season 2. It's just not going to happen at this point. So this may be the last time we see them, and I was like, I don't know what I was expecting going into this, but I figured that this will at least solve like some plot holes to like what exactly has happened with this group over the last several years, and you really didn't get much of that here, but we'll get into it here in a second. But let's stop. So let's start here for a second. Go back to the actual season 2 Digimon that came. I think was released 2000 now, so it was like the year 2000. Here's the thing. So if you guys recall, if you go to the very last episode of season 2, which seems like it was completely thrown together because they brought back Myotismon for some weird reason, just out of the blue, and it was like, oh well, he didn't actually die several years ago like we said that he did. His spirit ghost was just like kind of lying around and possessing some old man for a good period of time, and then all of a sudden they defeat Myotismon again, which had to be for like the third or fourth time with the last 2 series, and then they just fast forward into the future where it's like, oh, it's 25 years later and everyone has their own partner Digimon now, and we have 7 kids that all have their own versions of Hawkmon, and it was such an unoriginal and that was the last that we had saw of the adventure, both Adventure 1 and Adventure 2 for several years after the fact, and it left on such a dire, pissy note that a lot of the fan base was pretty much upset for several years after that whole thing occurred. So it's like, yeah, that whole season left a bad taste in people's mouth. So I'll start with you, Nurkins. I'll jump over to Eddie. What was your recollection of Digimon season 2? Because like I said, that's probably my second least favorite episode, probably my least favorite series that I was actually involved with. Because the thing with Frontier, I was never really that involved with the series, even though it was just like shite for the most part. But O2, I was much more involved, and it was far more disappointing as a series.
Well, with O2, it was very dissatisfying because you had all these storylines set up, like with the Dark Ocean and especially with Ken and Kari in particular, and we didn't get anything from it. And that's what I was especially hoping with this movie. When we saw it was titled The Beginning, I was like, okay, maybe we're going to get something with Ken here in particular, because Ken's stuff started like way back before Adventure 1. So I thought we were going to get something around there, but
yeah,
such a letdown.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this here in a second, but I think that this movie makes the exact same mistake that Digimon Tree did, when obviously you have several characters that have already been established, that have already been introduced, who the audience who is watching this are far more interested in, and instead they're going to introduce a new character and have the plot simmer around him, which means that you actually get less time with the other characters trying to figure out what the hell's been going on here for the last 20 years. Now our good buddy Eddy Brock here made a little bit of an oopsie before going on here, because he was supposed to watch the O2 movie. He ended up watching the original 1999 Digimon movie with the whole Angela Anaconda 4 kids mess, and trying to paste 3 movies together, and that's a whole other topic for a day.
I had no idea that I completely, because I wasn't really I can't say I was into really the Digimon lore, but I can't believe I missed on an acid trip that Digimon apparently was back then, because oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean that was around a time period where, like I said, Pokemon was blowing up. It was like the big anime thing like at that time period. I think it was even way bigger than like Dragon Ball Z and like stuff like that. And everyone was trying to find like their Pokemon clones. So it was like Digimon. I think Monster Rancher was a thing at that time period too. Metabots.
I remember Monster Ranchers. I was like, because I remember Pokemon. Pokemon kind of made sense because you went off, you wanted to go catch them all, right?
Yeah.
And Monster Rancher, same thing. You go and catch them all in a different kind of way. This, maybe it's because I watched a movie that was literally 3 of the plot relevant points all mixed into one movie, right?
Yeah.
Of like 3 different series. I don't know how in the world. I don't know how you all came out with ADHD after watching this.
Mhm.
This was just nothing but colors and ridiculous jokes that went nowhere.
The
Nobody had
animation
any
styles
time
are
to say-
nowhere remotely the same.
It was
So
like
The dub was a very interesting time, wasn't it? I didn't watch the dub for this one. I'm so glad I did not watch the dub for this.
So here's the thing. For those of you guys who don't remember, they released a Digimon movie in 2000, and what they did was it wasn't an actual original Digimon movie. What 4Kids did is that they took 3
It wasn't
Japanese
Fox, it
Digimon.
was Bandai.
Was it Bandai?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's even worse. But no,
It was Bandai and Fox Kids.
but what they did is that
I
they
never
took
thought I'd say that sentence out loud.
that's a roof. They took 3 completely unrelated Japanese Digimon movies that American audiences hadn't seen yet, and they quite literally copy and pasted it all together and fooled the audience into thinking that somehow it was one big movie with one continuing storyline in between the 3. And the 3 movies have absolutely nothing to do with one another whatsoever. Like what. One takes place before the season 1 of Digimon. One takes place in the after point of season 2, and then season 1, and then the last movie literally takes place somewhere in the middle of season 2. And it's just like, what do any of these things have to do with one another? And the question is, they have absolutely nothing to do with one another.
No, and I didn't understand why I'm watching like this weird child version of Evangelion's finish. Like with the instrumentality project going on while fucking less than Jake is playing in the background. I was like, what in the world am I doing? What am I looking at? My God.
And then next thing you know, I'm listening to Fat Boy Slim. And
Right.
it's just like, what is this happening to?
Where did this
That
come
was
from?
very different back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was just like, imagine trying to convince it. Now, here's the thing. The second part, I guess the second movie, which is the second part of the film, if you watch the Japanese version of that one's actually pretty good. Because, like I said, it completely changed the entire tone of like what's actually happening in the series, even though it's only like 40 minutes long, I think. But if you can want to go back and check that one out, that one's really good. The one thing that always confused me is, well, we mentioned this right before we went live here, is that in that third film, it was somehow about this American kid, Willis, who they had tried to attached in between like the thread of like 3 different movies. And we're going to talk about this here too, because there's actually a major plot point in the first movie that is supposed to go into this one that they completely changed the entire canon on. But in the third movie, it's like, okay, well, we need TK and Kari's Digimon to go Mega, so that way they can release the power of the Golden Digi-Egg. But I was just right. Well, if your 2 Digimon can go Mega, why do we even need the Golden Digi? Like, just fight the guy. You already have 2 holy. Like, what's even the point?
Just fight him. Just fight him with the power of spam bots and email junk, and just go after him.
I was like, even as a kid, I'm like sitting there thinking, wait, you guys could go Mega this whole time? It's like, what are we doing? Oh man, it's like an old bad Thanos video. It's like really when it comes down to it. But yeah,
especially in this case, where the beginning, because we don't know where the beginning's timeline is set. Because in remember, TK and Kari's Digimon are able to go Mega, so it's like, why are we doing this? Like, it's Anjumon.
And how come all the other season 2 kids are kidnapped outside of TK and Kari? What makes them so special?
Well, because they're part of the original cast.
If you guys remember that old episode of Retro Wave, I absolutely despise TK and Kari as characters. So it's like, like I said, those 2 can be Thanos snapped out of the universe. I don't think anyone would miss anyone.
It feels like it's got it based on the fact that Gatomon or Tailmon, if you're watching the Japanese version, could still digivolve into Angelomon. It feels, and also Kari's a kindergarten teacher as well, and TK is starting his writing career, and Davis has his ramen place. It's got to be after Try.
Like I said, the timelines of all this just don't make any sense.
That's why I'm like, is this? I don't think this is canon. There's no way this can be canon. That's same with Last Kazoo.
And this is the problem with, like I said, you mentioned that one too. This is the problem with a lot of these Digimon movies that come out after the fact. It's like if you're trying to place a timeline in between when did this take place, in between like the end of season 1 and season 2 and afterwards. Because like I said, the end of season 2 ends with them just moving 25 years into the future, and it's like, okay, well, this is the end. We're never going to see these guys again. And then all of a sudden they have to like go back, be like, okay, I guess we got to bake a couple of movies and specials in between the end of season 2 and that 25-year period that we had spent like all this time building up. So it's like, well, forget. Basically, what they're saying is, okay, forget the ending to season 2 because that's not really canon anymore. We're just gonna keep this whole thing going after the fact without actually explaining like how we got here in the first place.
What they're trying to do is pull a Dragon Ball. That's what they're trying to do with these movies and stuff. Is trying to do midquels leading up to it. And the problem is, it's because of how the timeline is being set with these movies, especially with the ending of the beginning, it's really not working. It really isn't. And it just, especially with the ending with the Digivices disappearing, it's like, yeah, this is not canon. There's no way this is canon. Same with Last Kazuna. Last Kazuna is definitely not canon because we saw Taichi and Matt have their Digimon at the end of 02. So yeah, these movies are not canon. Try, I can see being canon. That fits the timeline, but these Last Kazuna and the beginning, no, there's no way they are canon. It just can't be canon.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to start here. Like I said, there's so many angles I can go out to with this whole film. So let's kind of rewind just a little bit here. There's been several attempts at recreating Adventure Season 1 up to this time period. So if you guys remember, I believe it was Digimon Try. It came out first, and like I said, it was kind of fuzzy exactly like where this one took place in the whole timeline, because it was definitely a series where the O2 kids existed. However, it's not really portrayed like, when exactly did it take place. Like I said,
it was a midquel, so it was like after the Myotismon stuff.
Yeah.
But it was before the ending.
So Davis was gone, Yoli was gone, Cody was gone. They're only seen in silhouette. They're not actually in the series.
Ken wasn't there either, but that was a load of BS.
But that's the thing, though, because
Ken mentioned it too, because it was all the crest holders that were there, and Ken is a crest holder. So like Davis, Yoli, and Cody, it made sense for them to not be there because they didn't have their own crest. But Ken, that made no sense at all because he has a.
But remember, not only that, but it's like, okay, they had evil Genii pose as Ken from the Digimon Emperor days, but then we don't make any. Everyone is seeing Ken and they're seeing this evil version of Ken, yet no one's asking themselves, okay, well, where's the real Ken? Because clearly he's not the real Ken, but if he's taking Ken's form, then something has to be going on here. And I don't think it was until like literally the last episode 6 of that mini series that they even mentioned like them being involved in the universe. It's like you saw evil Ken, you saw evil Imperial Digimon, and I'm thinking to yourself, okay, you're teasing all these elements that the the O2 kids are around here somewhere, but the storyline's not really mentioning, okay, where are these kids? What happened to them? And it doesn't seem like any of the characters were too concerned about where their whereabouts were up to that point either.
Yeah, that was a huge problem. But as I said, Ken not being there in general, especially since his crest is a huge like question mark in all this, is a problem. Because like, I mean, I would have loved to seen Stingmon get an ultimate form since everyone was getting their mega forms. It's like, dude, wouldn't you want to see like Wormmon get an ultimate and mega form? Like that would have been the time for it.
And let's put it to you this way, because now we have Digimon Tree, And then after that whole thing went down, they decided, you know what, let's do a complete reboot of the first season of Digimon, which called Digimon 2020, where we kind of solved some of the plot holes or some of the issues with season one. Now, I made a very, very controversial statement on my review of it a couple of years ago. I said that I like 2020 a lot better than I liked season one, because I didn't like the fact that, okay, you have 8 characters, but only 2 of them like ever go Mega. You don't really put too much emphasis. Like after a certain point, there really isn't much emphasis on any other character outside of Ty and Matt. Like that's really just what it comes down to. Like I said, the focus is kind of on them. The other ones are basically just like background characters up to that point. So I do like that there was actual more focus and more story on the other characters, because like if you're gonna have 8 characters, you might as well use them all, right? So that part I liked. I think the story was a little bit better too, especially with Myotismon completely removed from it. Now a lot of people apparently didn't like it because all the elements from the 1999 version weren't there, and it's like, well, yeah, it's reboot. That's kind of the entire point, that a lot of those elements aren't going to be there. So I'm one of the rare people who actually like 2020, but outside of that, once again, it's like, okay, well, are we gonna like, is there gonna be any kind of like follow up on the O2 kids, because we still really haven't kind of followed up how they were like taken in the first place, and I feel like that's kind of an important point of the story, which leads us to this movie, which is Digimon Adventure 2, The Beginning, which is a movie that came out last year. It just came out in America, dubbed version fairly recently. So I thought, okay, maybe after all of these years, and it's been what, 24 years since the ending to season 2, that we're finally going to get some of these questions answered, and we ended up getting even more confusing questions to begin with. So I'll start this one off with you, Nerdigans. The setup of this movie is that we do the same thing, which is a problem with Try, which is like, okay, we're going to introduce a new character, and then that character is going to be the central focus of the entire story, even though we have all these other characters that people who are watching this actually care about and actually want to know about. So here we get an introduction to a character who we are told is actually the true origin of how everyone in the world got a partner Digimon. Now, if you remember in season 1, we were all told, in season 1 and in the movie, the lore is that, oh, well, one night Greymon and Paramon just showed up out of nowhere in the city and started fighting each other, and everyone who saw them fight just became a partner Digimon that very same night. It was all fate and blah, blah, blah. And then here this movie says, well, actually, that's not quite how it happened. What is your take on this character of Louis here that we're introduced for the first time, and what's your kind of your take on his character's introduction here?
I was like surprised that they went that dark with Louis, because Louis, like we saw him, he was abused as a kid.
Oh yeah.
He like was left out, he was hit, we saw like bruises on his body, he was left out in the cold, and like he was about to die from being frozen, and this Digimon saved him. But the thing that really I'm just really like down about is that they could have like had something with him and Ken. I really was hoping we were going to get some like connection with them, because this is like this is supposed to be the beginning, and him and Ken were like before the O2 kids even like formed. He could have had something there. Just really bugs me. But I really don't like how this messed with the lore. I really don't.
Yeah. Because like I said, now like right off the bat, like we're watching this thinking that we're going to get some questions and some answers to what's been going on over the last 7 years, and right off the bat we immediately changed the entire ethos of how this whole thing started in the first place. So like I say, so this is the character of Louis here, who we're introduced. Once again, it's a giant digi-egg in the sky setup. So we've seen this a couple of times before up to this point. And every time we see this, it's like, oh, there's a giant digi-egg in the sky. That means that something big is going to hatch out of it. Like we saw this, like I said, with the whole Parrotmon situation from the very, very beginning. I think they used that in the Diaboromon Strikes Back movie as well. Yeah. So you know that if there's a giant egg in the sky, something bad's about to happen. And here you got a giant egg in the sky. And then this kid just shows up like out of nowhere. This purple hair Ken clone, just how it happens. And he gets saved by the other kid. Now, I guess we should stop here for a second, because this is something that I want to address too. It's like, it feels like to me that they kind of rushed some character development in between here. At the same time, they also pretty much like dropped the ball on a lot of character development of the characters here, because when we bring this back up here a second, but the first time we see the OT kids, they're working, I guess, Davis's restaurant, because remember that was the whole I guess Davis
was running a ramen restaurant. That was his dream.
Yeah, and then when the season 2 actually ended, he actually was running like a noodle cart. But now it's like, well, can't really run noodle carts anymore because those are kind of out of style from 25 years. So we'll just have him run a noodle shop. And here you have all the kids here, and you can see it here. You have Ken over here on the far left with Wormmon, Yoli, who looks a lot like Nerdigan. So I'm going to talk about that later on here too. Cody, who's also still here, and then of course you have TK and Kari, and it just kind of feels like that. A lot of these guys, like. If I'm being completely honest, you probably didn't need them in this story if you weren't going to really focus on them as the characters to begin with. Because, I mean, at this point, a lot of these guys are basically just supporting cast who don't really do much. And like I said, this is the first, I guess, O2 movie that we've had in a couple of decades. You kind of missed the ball on this right out of the gate. How do you think they handled the return of the O2 kids here?
They really didn't do a good job with this. They really didn't. This could have been like Alaska, because remember with Last Kizuna, it was a Ty and Matt story, and they just focused on them, and they didn't include anyone else, and it worked. It worked better that way. And with this, they were trying to do a little too much. If they would have just, what do you think about that?
No, it's like for me, and here's my thing. It's like, you introduce all these characters that you want people to, I guess, somewhat, connect with. But then when they start asking the question, okay, so what is the fate of these characters that they've spent 20 years investing in? You really don't want to put that much into them, because like I said, the whole thing with season 1 is like you said, the whole focus is on Ty and Matt. So everyone else is kind of like a background character at this point.
Well, that's why Last Kizuna worked, because you didn't have any of the other characters there. Yeah, you got to see some of the O2 characters make an appearance or so. Mm-hmm. But it was mostly on Matt and Ty, so you were more invested in the movie. So when we got to the ending of Last Kizuna and you saw Matt and Ty say goodbye to Agumon and Gabumon, you were really invested, and it was really emotional when they said their farewells to them. Here, like, you don't get that investment, that emotional investment. Yeah, you do with Louis and Okukumon. Yeah, you get that investment, but like you don't get it with any of the other characters, which really frustrated me.
Yeah. And so here's a couple of notes that I have here with some of these characters too. Like I said, Cody remains the most useless character in this entire series, like by far. He may be the most useless character in the first 2 seasons of Digimon. Like, to me, I just don't see a point of having him in. It feels like you have to have him in by default, but you haven't given him an ounce of character in quite literally 25 years. And I don't think that they improved that situation at all here. Ken, for the most part, was probably the most developed character in season 2, kind of from where he started to where he ended. But they really just dropped the ball on him on this movie, because I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, why is he even like really here? Because he barely has like any lines. I don't think he has like that much screen time like at all. Yeah, he's supposed to be a central like character in the film because of his partnership with Davis, but it's like he just didn't have anything like for him at all. Then, especially with the character, we'll talk about the kind of his background of, he was abused by his mother. His father was kind of like, had like some kind of like illness where he just wasn't like around. So he had to deal with like a crazy abusive mother the entire time. So Ken can obviously allude to someone with like a pretty tragic like background. And this is kind of just me thinking here. It's like, if I have one character that has, a similar background to another character, my thought process is, okay, how is this character going to interact with this other one? It's like, how are their worlds going to collide? Like, is there going to be some kind of common ground that can have between one another? And they just completely dropped the ball on that entirely. And then, like I said, you just got TK and Kari here for the most part, or just here because they're TK and Kari, and then that's probably a big. But
I want to touch upon that, because Ken was basically neglected because his parents favored his brother over him, and that was until his brother died. So like Ken that's why I'm like, you could have done something with Ken and Louis and done something with the Dark like where they visited the Dark Ocean. You could have had Kari involved too in in that regard as well, and could have done something really, really cool with this. But I will say this though, Louis is definitely a better character than Mako. Oh my god, she was just. Ugh.
I mean, they feel like they're basically similar characters in the fact where everything is based on like their trauma, and that's like the whole situation. It's like, look, I get it, but at the same time, it's like I'm not watching this movie for like those characters. It's like at the end of the day, it's like I don't really care too much about this introduction of a new character when I've already had established one with several others here. But our good buddy, our good buddy here, good buddy Bigglemetz is actually joining us here tonight. He actually did see this movie here that we're talking about here. So I know you were running a little bit late, but you're joining us here. Basically, we're talking about kind of the setup of this movie, and like I said, the whole thing is that you have this character of Louis, who's who reveals to the group here that, hey, by the way, the reason why all you guys actually have a partner Digimon had nothing to do with that Greymon Paramon fight that we basically set our whole foundation on. It was because I had a Digimon that came from a magical Digi egg that just appeared out of nowhere, and in his effort to make me happy, he just decided, oh, why don't I just give everyone in the world a partner Digimon? And that quite literally ends up being like the plot of this movie. Is that in his attempt to make Louis happy, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna give everyone in the world their very own partner Digimon and cause unfathomable chaos around the entire world. So before we get too much into the plot here, what did you think about watching season 2? What was your general feelings on Digimon season 2? Let's kind of start
Well,
there.
I played the trading card game, and my deck is all around Davis and Ken.
Yep.
So so this, I was super excited to watch this. Now, this isn't based on what you were talking about. It's based on the 2020 reboot of Digimon. So like they redid everything where Omnimon comes in the first episode, and there's no character growth. It's just Toei animation and their extreme power jumps. So like the Parrotmon and the Greymon fight that you mentioned isn't actually part of that setup from the 2021. So even though it's still the characters from season 2 and the second generation is by far my favorite of Digimon. But it's entirely different. But they even retconned the 2021 that they just redid. So it's really weird.
It's like continuity be damned. That's pretty much like where we're at right now, right?
Yeah.
But Last Kazuna
what's really
like
cool
that too. Last Kazuna did major retcons as well. So it's like that's one like this movie is I feel like these movies like Last Kazuna and this one they're not canon. They're like the Dragon Ball movies. They're not canon. Well,
are you saying that this is Digimon's version of BoJack? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what it feels like. This and Last Kazuna feel like the BoJack and the Broly. Well, the original Broly. That's what it kind of feels like to me.
I will say this though. I mean, the one thing that I think they did right with this one is that they did put a lot of good focus and character development on Davis here, because I mean Davis is kind of the de facto leader as much as they try to like have TK and Kari in the background to like steal his thunder. But I mean, for the most part, he is the best character in this entire series here, and he's probably the only character that gets a proper development and proper shine in this whole thing. Which is like, no, I'm glad that they did that for a couple of reasons, but I kind of feel like, with the whole thing with him and Imperial Dramon, it's like we've already kind of revealed like where the peak of this is going to be, and like I don't want this to turn into like Dragon Ball Z, where it's like every time there's a new movie or show, we have to like create a new level of Super Saiyan to ascend to so they can defeat like the villain of the week. Like I don't want them to go like that far too, but at the same time, it's like, do we really have anything like new for these guys? I think their last big shine that they got was probably that Diaboromon Strikes Back movie, where the very end where he goes into the Paladin mode, which is like one of like a callback to the Royal Knights for the most part. But outside that, you don't get anything too alluring to that in this series. What is your take on Nerdigans on kind of like the animation style here? Wes, we know that Yoli looks a lot like you, but I mean, just generally over the 25-year period, do you think that the animation style was a lot better, or do you think they kind of fell short here?
I think it looks a lot smoother compared to back then, and I would say the CGI for like the Digivolutions for Imperial Dramon, it looks a lot better, a lot crisper. compared to back then. Because remember, back then, this is when CGI was starting to like really be implemented. So the CGI was very crunchy.
So this is something I'm gonna blame on your generation because you're the one who really like laps this stuff up. Here you have a character that's basically a whiny emo character from like the early 2000s to the point where it's like you could almost tell that he listens to like Linkin Park and like My Chemical Romance like on his spare time, and then like the whole thing is that they show his backstory. Like I said, the storyline is very dark because, like I said, this is a kid who's being physically abused. Like, it's not just like, you know, oh, his mother like smacks him whenever she gets drunk. It's like she throws him like outside in the cold, just completely beaten and like bruised up. It's like I guess Child Protective Services does not exist in Japan like at all because she would definitely have gotten this kid taken away a long time ago. And then in a fit of rage because at one point, what is the name of the Digimon again? I'm blanking on the name here.
It was so forgettable, I couldn't remember it.
I think it was a Kukumon or something like that.
We'll go with a Kukumon until proven otherwise. But the whole setup here is that, you know, the Digimon is like kind of like possessing his parents so that, you know, they'll do stuff that like make him happy, but he knows that it's not real. And he doesn't like want to, even though his mother is like an abusive drunk and his dad's like a quadriplegic or whatever the case may be. Like he doesn't want, you know, puppet parents, right? But so in a fit of rage, because, you know, he's so upset, he starts like smashing like his Digivice. I guess like a piece of it goes into his eye where he like loses his eye too. So it's like, oh great, not only do you have childhood trauma, but now you're blind. So where you go. And then the Digimon's just like, oh, I'll just give you my eye. So he just gets like this deformed digital eye.
That was so creepy and it was so gross. I was like, oh my god.
And you know what's funny about this is that we just had, if you guys remember, about like a year or two ago, we had a Digimon series called Ghost Game, and Ghost Game was supposed to be a Digimon series that was completely committed to the horror genre, right? So it's supposed to be Digimon's first horror theme Digimon series. And yet it was so lame. Like they really didn't play up on like any of the horror elements to that. Like, basically what would happen in every episode for like 65 episodes was there would be a Digimon shows up, it starts attacking people, and then about 20 minutes later you find out that the whole thing was just one giant misunderstanding. And then they'll go into the next. That went on for like 60 episodes for the most part.
This is what Ghost Game I think was trying to do. Like you did have a misunderstanding here, let's be real, because they weren't communicating. They didn't know what each of them wanted, but man, did it play up the horror.
Yeah, and like I said, it did this one did a very better job at playing up that horror element to it than the actual Digimon series that was supposed to be based on the horror genre. So like I said, it just makes absolutely no sense on where they would do that here. But so we get into the whole story. Like I said, it's pretty dark, it's pretty brutal. Like I said, he's basically out there in a potato sack in the cold, and like it's snowing, he's all bruised and beat up, and this is where he meets his partner Digimon for the first time. And I do like the fact that, you know, they kept it's essentially like a flashback to seeing like what happened with this kid earlier in his life, and you kind of see like Davis and Ken like reacting, and because of course Davis is like sitting there like he wants to just like beat everybody up because he's like pissed off like the treatment of this kid, but not realizing, hey, this is a past flashback, you really can't do anything to stop it. And you know, went well with his character as well. But then, like I said, you go back here and it's like, oh yeah, but now we have to interlude essentially the past with the present characters, and this is kind of when we lose the plot with the present characters here, where everything is now based on Louis, and then Davis and Ken are kind of there for the ride, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well now we have like 5 other characters from season 2 that are just kind of like there, and the plot at this point really doesn't need them. Like it really doesn't need the other kids. So this is where I say it really drops the ball, because you know that people watching this or for a while have been really looking forward to seeing, you know, what has happened with these kids. Maybe people thought that we were going to get some unanswered questions after several years, and you really just don't get that. So depending on what your expectation of this movie is, it's probably not going to meet your expectations very well, because I do think they kind of dropped the ball on a lot of well, what's the best way just people were looking forward to, okay, I finally get to figure out what happened with my favorite characters from 20 years ago, and it's like, we don't really tell you too much, and then the film ends. So that's why I think it kind of drops the ball on that aspect. Would you agree with that, Biggles?
Yeah, this so I was super excited for this, and it was super let down. I even got to talk to Ken / Vmon's voice actor in January. I talked to him for about 30 minutes. He even did a little free video of him going Vmon Digivolve 2 X Vmon, right? He even did that for free, put it on my phone, so I have it on my phone.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I was so excited about this. And we talked about this for a little bit. And it just, when it came on, I'm just like, why? I don't care about this Louis kid. Who cares? He's being abused by his parents, and now he's got this Digimon who's like, now your parents don't abuse you. Now you're a comatose father is now out of his coma. And I'm like, I don't care. Give me the characters I care about.
Yeah, like I said, this is the problem, right? Like I said, the same thing with Digimon Try. It's like people want to see what happened with the characters that they're already accustomed to. Like, I'm not against introducing new characters if if you're still building like essentially the story around the characters that we already care about. You can introduce new characters, but they make this kid the central focus of the entire movie. So you start looking at your clock, you're like 30 minutes into like a movie that's not even 90 minutes, and it's like this really isn't an Adventure 2 movie for the most part. Like I'm not learning anything about what has Davis been up to for these last several years, because there is a certain time jump from where season 2 ended to where we are here right now. So it's like, okay, well, what happened during that time period? Like are they almost out of college? Like, has there been any events here? How's it been living? Like, we don't really get much of that outside of, okay, here's a couple of minutes, here's Davis working at a noodle shop, and I guess that's what we're supposed to assume that they've been doing this entire time. So
Well, I feel like something I do want to say here, because this is titled The Beginning. You could have just done a straight up prequel movie and just done a Ken movie. Like, and I think the Digimon fan base would have been happy with that. Even my categories. Like, because that, like, you could have, as I said before, you could have had it where Louis was connected to, like, Ken and his brother. Because I think people would have wanted to see, like, just Ken and his brother, like, going into the digital world and their adventure in there and seeing, like, the darker side of it. That's what people would have wanted to see more than this, just to be honest.
It's such a missed opportunity here with this character. What is the Digimon's name here again? Because I know we just mentioned it earlier.
I think it's like Unimon or something. I don't know.
Kokumon or something like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, and the concept here is like, once again, you don't really have a true villain in this film either. Like I said, it's just basically a series of like misunderstandings of the Digimon just wants, the little kid to be happy, but obviously he takes it too far because he doesn't understand that there is a line between kind of like understanding humanity and how humanity works. So when you're just like, oh, I'll just brainwash all these kids to force them to do everything that you want them to do, it's like, well, that's not how humans work. You're basically turning people into robots, which is messed up, and you shouldn't do that. But obviously he has no context here, because when he met the kid, it was like, yeah, he was some abused kid who was being beaten by his mom and then being forced to sleep outside on the patio. So he's just thinking, okay, I'm just gonna make sure to do everything that makes you feel good. And so like, no, there's a line there. Even though I'm an abused kid, I understand that as a humanity side, this is kind of fucked up. Like, don't zombify like my quadriplegic dad and force him to act like the guy from Family Matters. It's like, that's not right. But for me, like, I'm watching this in this series, I was like, okay, I can empathize with the kid from a certain level here, but at the same time, I think the same thing what Biggles was saying. It's like, I really just don't care that much about focusing on his character. I wanted to focus on everyone else, and I just don't think that we got that out of this film here. What was kind of your take, Nerdigans, on, I guess, do you think that anyone who had certain expectations of this movie, do you think that this film ultimately dropped the ball on, I guess, fulfilling those? Because, I mean, if you weren't going to explore more about the O2 kids after all this time, it's kind of like, why did you even make this movie in the first place? It's like, what were you exactly hoping for out of here? That you were going to use this to propel, like, another O2 series, like, in the future? Because it doesn't seem like that's what they're doing here. So it just kind of feels like a one-off that really doesn't have a much bigger impact here, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just like Last Kazuna. It was a one-off with Last Kazuna. Mm-hmm. Same thing with this. That's what it feels like this movie's doing. I just have a feeling we're going to get something similar with to try with O2 at some point. If we do get that, I really, really want them to focus on like the storylines that we didn't get, like the Dark Ocean, like that in particular needs to just get addressed. and also get like Ultimate.
I mean,
Adventure
that's the
for
thing though, right?
everybody.
Because we've had so many opportunities to address that in 25 years. Like I said, with Tree in 2020, and then with this one, it feels like if they haven't addressed it at this point, I just don't think they're even going to address it anymore. Like that's kind of the sad reality.
Well,
that
they
we're
couldn't
in.
address it in. They couldn't address it in Tree. Well, they could with Kari technically, but like I feel like
Well,
if you were going to address it, you would need Ken and Kari to.
Well,
like,
I will push back on that because you remember the very last, one of the last scenes in Tree was the girl who we were told to be that she was one of the original Digidestin, that 5 group that we never found out the names for. She was one of those 5, yet the whole series ends with her just walking into the dark ocean by herself, and then we're just assumed that, okay, she's dead and she's in hell now, and that's where the whole like series ends. So they
could
had the dark
continue
ocean.
so
Yeah.
could continue that with if they do another like a Tree style for the O2 kids, and then go continue into that Dark Ocean storyline because that's what it seems like it's setting up.
Yeah, but it's been setting up for that for a while, though. The question is, when's going to be like the payoff, like for this whole
God,
thing?
that was so creepy. This, oh God, see,
Like
like
I said,
Ghosty was trying to do. Ghosty was trying to do this.
That's what I was going to say, though. It's like I will give it credit, the movie this much credit. It hits the horror elements to it far better than Ghost Game ever did. And I was like, how did you make an entire series based in the realm of horror and you don't have a single scene in 65 episodes that is remotely as unsettling as this one was? It's like, shouldn't you be embarrassed at some level? It's like, what did you do for all that time? Yeah, so literally the one-eyed Digimon here starts melting away. And there was like this whole scene where like he was trying to choke him to death, like on the floor, and then like couldn't do it. And it's like it's supposed to try to choke him to death, and he's like still smiling, which is somehow even like creepier. It's like,
creepier.
do you understand? Like I'm literally trying to kill you right now. Oh man, yeah. So that whole part towards the middle was actually like pretty good. And, like I said, they do a good job kind of explaining what's his name, Louis' origin story. And look,
I do want to mention this again, like Louis abusing the Digimon and stuff like that. Again, you could have done something with that with Ken. Louis and Ken could have had some really good stuff, and they didn't do it. Why?
Yep. I'll say this though, and to be fair to like Louis, I think Louis' character development is far greater than anything they've ever given Cody. And I know it seems like I'm really hitting on Cody tonight, and I am, because let's be honest, the guy's kind of a bum. Has anyone have one solid reason that you can counteract to me as like why I should care about Cody as a character and everything that they've done with him in the course of the last 25 years?
Because Digimon is awesome. Oh wait.
Oh man,
that's it. Like, so I did a stream all about Digimon, and we talked about it. And like the characters that we didn't like were Cody and Yoli, and then everybody else we just kind of liked. And we're like, Joe's kind of lame too. So everybody else besides those 3 we had like higher up. And I know a person who like hates Davis, hates Davis with a passion. But that's because they like Kari and TK together, so they hate Davis because he's the romantic rival to TK. But people are weird. Yeah. So I really like Cody's voice actor in this, but I don't like Cody as a character. He basically does nothing. All he does in this entire movie is like, yeah, I got us back in our middle school computer lab. And that's it.
Yay.
But basically, this movie was supposed to set up, so they did the 2020 remake of the series of 1, and this movie was supposed to set up going forward, a season 2 of the remake or the reboot. And that movie you keep mentioning, it was supposed to be off of these 6 little films that came before that was explaining basically what happened to them later on. So I don't know if that is based on the same canon or the 2020 canon, because I haven't seen those 6 other films.
Well, see, maybe Nerdigans can answer this question, because I was under the impression that this is based on the original O2 canon, not the 2020 canon, because the 2020 canon technically doesn't have anything to do with O2, right?
yeah, 2020 hasn't gotten into O2. So this is, from what I understood, was the movies so far, and that's including Try, are supposed to be based off of the original canon. But based on what I remember with Last Kazuna, especially if we're going to fit it into the original canon, and that's including the final episode, with Last Kazuna, Matt and Tai don't have Agumon and Gabumon anymore. They basically die, so to speak. So
There's a
yeah,
happy
that
ending.
kind of does not fit into the canon from the original canon for O2. That's why I'm like, yeah, Last Kazuna, it can't be canon. This, what this did, with essentially getting rid of the Digivices as a whole, yeah, that kind of does not fit into the canon when you see them at the end of O2 having Digivices, if I remember correctly. So yeah, this does not fit into the canon. But Try does fit into the canon just fine. I don't think there's any issue with Try fitting into the canon, because it's like Dragon Ball Super, essentially, where it is a midquel. It takes place within the 25-year time skip. So Try is not an issue with the continuity. It's just this movie and the Last Kazuna that are the problems.
Yeah, so we get into, I guess, towards the ending of this film, that will release the climax portion here, and now the giant digi-egg in the sky finally cracks, and it turns out, I guess, this whole time that Kokomon was in the egg that he had transformed into his mega level, and then as his final gift to you, Louis here, he's going to give everyone in the entire planet a partner Digimon. So there's like literally like eggs within eggs, like in the sky, and everyone realizes, oh, if everyone has their own partner Digimon, it's literally going to be the end of the world, because then you're going to have like police officers who are partner Digimon, and like presidents and world leaders, and it's like, oh, this whole thing is going to end terribly, so like we have to stop him here. So once again, this last act of kindness without self-awareness whatsoever goes in, and this is where we finally get all of the old O2 cast to shine here, because this is like, okay, well, now we have to all team up together to stop this giant vagina eggplant in the sky from killing the entire world. And this is the climax of the ending here. I will say this. Well, when we do get to this portion of the movie, I think we were mentioning earlier, Nerdigans, I think the animation style is a lot more slicker to an extent here. They do a better job putting like the digivolutions together. The fight scenes are brought together a lot more too. That just over the course, like I said, 25 years of animation development here. But yeah, they do a very good job of giving the characters here a far different scale than what they had before, and they actually brought back the DNA evolutions of the other cast.
We knew the farmers weren't going to come back. There was no way they were. But I'm glad
there's no way. There's no way they're doing a Digi Armor energized crap anymore. So it's,
no.
Hey, that's my favorite, dude. Flame Dramon, top tier.
I mean, look, it's a quick little sidebar here. Like the whole Digi Armor Energized was so cringe, even as a kid. Like listening to that whole thing, I don't know if that was like a 4Kids decision, or if that was in the original Japanese version or not. But I was like, I don't know who made that call. That person needs to be fired. That one needs to be cast away into the Shadow One for forever.
That was all Ken. That was Ken. Ken did it with the Black Spires. He wouldn't let them digivolve.
Mm-hmm.
I am for the Digi Armor Energize, okay? You can't change my mind. You can't bully me out of this.
Now, let me ask you this question. Do you think that this would have been better, or this film probably would have done a lot better had they had the other two DNA evolution guys go Mega 2? Because up to this point, like I said, it's only been Imperial Dramon up to this point. It's like, well, it has to be a Mega to the other two like as well. Maybe in the context of this series, they could have possibly used that. Do you think that was a missed opportunity?
Yeah, I would have loved to seen it. I mean, we saw, but the problem is though, this isn't like Try, where it's kind of spread out a little bit more, so it makes more sense for them to earn the Mega Digivolution. So it just kind of doesn't make sense. But God, I would have loved to seen it just for the fan service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, the fan service alone. I mean, that's kind of in the theme here with Digimon. It's like they give us fan service by telling us, "Hey, there's a new Digimon movie out here, and it's gonna be great." And then like we actually watch the movie, and it's like, "Oh, okay, well this is kind
At
of
least
a
give us the fan
disappointment."
service and just give us the mega forms. Why not?
But
I
then
would have
again-
rather. Oh, sorry. I would have rather had the mega forms of Angemon and Angelomon than the other ones, because I really don't give a shit about
The
Hawkmon and Armadillomon. Like, I really don't care about those two.
But that's to say, like, they don't give you a reason to care. And that's always been my complaint about those characters. It's like Cody, it's like he's just there. Like, that's the best thing I can say about Cody in the entire run of Digimon. He's just there. And then Yoli is just like a more bitchier version of Mimi. And that's the whole reason why she's there too. And I think they were trying to like make some kind of, they've teased it quite a few times about there being like a romantic leak between like Ken and Yoli in the earlier stages of O2. Yeah, in the late stages. But then again, like I said, they kind of like decanonized that ending though, because ever since then they really have made no allusion like to that since. I think it was because it was so negatively received, knowing that no, we're just gonna fast forward 25 years to the future and then like it's all over. It's like, well, there's nothing more we can do with these kids unless we just say, okay, well maybe that whole ending isn't canon anymore. Which I think
there's
is kind of
also
what they did.
One other problem though in regards to like Cody and Yoli getting, their Digimon getting ultimate or mega forms. They don't have crests. Ken, you can make Ken can, because he does technically have a crest. Davis, Yoli, and Cody don't. They would have to. You could have done a movie where they got crests, and then could have done something cool with it. That's why I'm like, if you want to do like a try and have them go on a journey and face a new enemy, and in the process get crests, that would be good. You get something from there, and then you get to see ultimate and mega forms. But yeah, the only other one that could get an ultimate and mega form would be Ken, because he has a crest.
Yeah. And then here's the other thing. So I know this is a big thing with like season 2 as well. Because there was like a time period where the season 1 kids weren't even allowed to go ultimate because of like the whole crest situation. But wasn't that rectified in like the end of that series where like that was no longer a thing anymore? So I guess
it in try they definitely rectified it. But yeah, it was rectified by, I think it was. They fixed it when they did the world tour, and then it was then completely rectified in try. Because remember, they're all able to go mega, ultimate and mega.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because we're talking about the try, so yeah, that makes far more sense now. And then, like I said, then 2020 comes around. It's like, you know what? We're just gonna reboot the shit out of all of this and just make them all go to mega. So it's like, okay, that's great.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about 2020 is that it doesn't feel like it's as it's earned like it does in the original. Because in the original, especially when we get to try and they earn the ultimate and mega forms, they like are in a crisis situation, and that's how they earn it. Minus Matt and Ty when they just got shot with arrows. That was like a huge what the fuck. But everyone else. Mm-hmm.
That was part of the prophecy.
It was the arrows of arrows of hope and light. Don't forget that.
That is true. But like everyone else, everyone else earned their ultimate. Well, all of them technically earned their ultimate forms when they digivolved, because they were all in a crisis situation.
And that was the thing, though, right? Because it was like they build up a good story for everyone to go ultimate, but then once everyone went ultimate, it was like, okay, at this point, we're only going to have 2 of these guys go mega for like the next 20 years, and we'll just leave it at that. It's like we have to wait like 16 years to get the mega forms from like everybody else. So that's one hell of a commitment there to just be like, fuck all these other guys. So obviously, I guess the conclusion of this series comes back to this. Like, we go back into another flashback where Louis is having a conversation with his partner Digimon, trying to get him to understand that hey, look, you don't have to do all these things to make me happy anymore. I'm a big boy now. I'm an adult. Like I listen to Limp Bizkit now. I don't listen to Linkin Park anymore. And trying to get him to like understand, because otherwise you're just gonna have to kill him. Like that's what it really comes down to. It's like they're trying to talk him out the ledge for like, okay, the option is that either you stop or we're gonna hit you with like a laser blast like out of nowhere, like something out of Dragon Ball Z. Then you're gonna die. So please stop. This was like kind of like the realization point. But of course, this is kind of supposed to be a mirror of the first relationship between a Digimon and his partner human. Which, if this was the first Digimon relationship, I think there was probably a reason why they had to retcon this whole thing, because it was like, oh yeah, maybe this thing was a mistake from the very beginning. Maybe we shouldn't have allowed this to go on here, especially since, like I said, they retconned so much from that Adventure 1 saga here. But and then I'll say this: we do get a little brief reunion, or I guess, of the world tour. If you guys remember the world tour for season 2, where it's like, okay, well now we're gonna go to all these places around the world who have their own partner Digimon. We're gonna go fight Digimon with them. So you get a little bit of a flashback scene where like they go to like, you know, China and Brazil and all these other places where everyone has their partner Digimon. And well, once again, we're doing the whole, hey everyone, let's all use your Digivices, like, you know, like the Spirit Bomb from Dragon Ball Z, and then we're gonna use this.
God, I hated this so much.
Everyone put your Digivices in the air, so like all the power levels can be collected, and then this way we'll finally defeat the bad guy of the show. I'm just like, can we stop with I don't know what is going on with Japan. It's like the Spirit Bomb worked once. Like, just stop. We don't need it over and over again. But yeah, this is how they choose to conclude things here with season 2. And then once it's all concluded, it just starts snowing in Japan for reasons. Because was it even snowing at the beginning of this fight?
It was no. It was snowing in the flashback though, which was which was very depressing, because like dude was gonna die in the snow.
Yeah. And so I was like, screw it. And then once, you know, they finally get rid of the evil Digimon, just like, hey, you know what? Let's just go out here and just have a good old-fashioned snow fight. And then we'll just reference all the other nameless, faceless Digidestins all over the world who were having good times with their partner Digimon. And this is quite literally the end of the film right here at this very moment. So, like I said, you get about 70 minutes worth of O2 action, and you sit there, you think to yourself, it's like, did I actually get what I wanted out of this? I'm not entirely sure. Did this movie need to exist? I'm not entirely sure, because I just feel like if you're going to bring this series back, and like I said, the official conclusion of this was 2001. So it's been roughly 22 years since we've seen them in any real capacity since then. And it's like, if you're not going to give them like a new moment to be like, okay, now we can finally conclude things, give them any kind of closure, like, it doesn't feel like this film did that much better of a job of concluding the season 2, the O2 of Digimon, than the original anime did. And it kind of feels like it's a disappointment, because it's like, this is your one opportunity to kind of fix things, and you didn't really do it. What is your take on the entire movie here, Biggles? Start with you.
I don't really, I like it, but I don't like it because I don't really care about Louis. I don't care about his little friend. Mm-hmm. I didn't get enough Davis and Ken and Vmon, so I'm just kind of like, eh. But I still do think this is supposed to be setting up they're supposed to do like a season 2 kind of thing based on the 2020, based on like the people I've talked to, like the voice actors. Yeah. So
I'm gonna be surprised.
So I think this is supposed to be part of that, and not, or the 2020 canon, and not the original. But even that, they retconned that. So I don't know. I feel like I didn't need this.
Eddie, let me ask you a question. As someone who watched the wrong movie inadvertently here, and now you're catching up with like the rest of us, what's kind of your takeaways? Some of the things that you've noticed with the O2 movie here?
I am quite surprised that I have not picked up on any of this. It sounds like all you are not very happy. Honestly, I like the Digimon Fairly Odd Parents kind of going on here, where they find an emo kid and they try to make him happy by granting his wishes. And let's see. There was no random newfound glory in the middle of this, so that doesn't sound like a good part of it. And there was no like attacks of spam emails, and there was no burnt liver sticks. So I can't recommend this movie at all. 0 out of 5.
As, Nerdigans, as someone who actually did see the movie, would you agree with the 0 out of 5, or you think that, that this was a little too harsh for this film?
That's too harsh, considering like the good animation and like the good. At least Louis did have some good character development, and I really did like the horror stuff up in here that we did have. I would give it maybe like a 2 out of 5. I just really this could have been fixed. There was potential here. There really was. I just wish they would have just connected this more with Ken's story more than anything else. This should have been a Ken, if anything, as I've been saying, this should have been a Ken movie. If you're going to call it the beginning and make it an O2 movie, this should have been a Ken movie.
Yeah, so here's my thing too. It's like I don't mind Louis' story because I do think a lot of elements are handled pretty well. The problem is this is just the wrong movie to present that story because, like I said, you have a group of people here who are looking to figure out, okay, what has happened to our group over the course of like the last 20 years. It's really like, hey, we haven't really focused much on this particular group of Digidestineds in a long time. And when other movies that we've done over the last several years have referenced them, it's always been in passing, or it's only give you like a little bit of like the actual story. So people are going into this thinking, okay, well, I want to see more of Ken, I want to see more of Davis, I want to see more of like all these other characters. Yet you spend the majority of the runtime here focusing on a new character who was just introduced, who a lot of people are not going to be that familiar with. Even if he is a good character, it's like this is not the right guys, this is not the right place to introduce this character, at least in a movie format. Like if you were going to do like a mini series or maybe like a new
Try kind of thing, if you were doing like a Digimon Try situation and you had Louis as like one of the characters, he's better than Mako. I couldn't stand her.
I mean, Mako, it was absolutely terrible. That whole Mako-mon thing.
Mako. Like you could have done like some Digimon like Tamers kind of stuff going on with Louis if you had like a Try format. And I think it would have worked really, really nicely. Just a movie format just did not work for him.
Yeah. And I think if you were going to do a series where you could have drugged this out a little bit longer and had, like you said, the whole May storyline, which is like absolutely terrible, but this one was much better done. However, in a movie format, I don't think it works. If you were going to do this in a miniseries format or do like a whole new series where this would have been a storyline that would progress at a certain point in time, you could have actually focused on more characters as a result of that. I think it would have played out far better, and I think it would have ultimately been a much bigger success. But like I said, you're basically doing like a 90-minute, like 70-minute movie here where you're trying to focus on these other characters people haven't seen in a while, and then you're trying to introduce a new character, make everyone focus on them, and that's really not what's going to work here. And think about it like this too. This is another big complaint that I have. We started off this whole show talking about all of the plot holes and all of the missed storylines from Adventure 2. Like, we talked about the Dark Ocean. We talked about the whole thing with Daemon. We talked about the whole thing with the Cthulhu monster that no one ever saw again. We just saw a silhouette and it was never mentioned again. So
bring up Daemon for a second. Daemon showed up in Try as well. You could have brought Daemon back for this and had it connect to Try.
But that's the thing, though. So it's like you could have just picked up one of those missing storylines or missing plot holes from the second season and made that the focus of the season 2 movie instead. That way, okay, we're at least addressing that, hey, this is something that we were supposed to cover up like 20 years ago, didn't do it, and now we have an opportunity to cover it in this new saga. That way, I think it would be more favorable with the 02 cast out there. That's like, oh yeah, what happened with Daemon? Oh, what happened with this Digimon? Oh, you could have made reference to like, you know, the Spires, or hey, the evil Genii that became Kin earlier. Like maybe we should do a little story about that. Like, there's more entertaining stories involving this cast that you could have done, rather than like, okay, let's just create like a new story out of thin air, and then just like they forget that exactly, right? Yeah. Like we remember these plot holes from several years ago, so it's like you could have just focused on one of the several plot holes of O2 and made a movie out of that, like, and be far more satisfying.
The movie's called The Beginning, and as I was saying, this should have been a prequel movie and just focused on Ken, because remember, Ken wandered into the Dark Ocean as a kid. He got the spire in his neck as a kid. We could have had something to like just write about that, and it would have been good. and like had like flashbacks to that, and like then go into the dark ocean.
Nope, but instead we have to have a Hallmark movie about this dude, this bag douche. Now, I will say this, and this is kind of where where we can kind of wrap things up here, is that we look at kind of where Digimon had started off and where it is now. I think when you look at the series that they've done up to this point, you've kind of bled Adventure and Adventure 2 to death at this point. Like, it's been done to death. You've had like full reboots, the non-canon movies and all this other stuff. Like, there really isn't anything more you can do with the season 1 or season 2 cast up to this point. So I think you're pretty much tapped out with those two. Everyone's been talking about, oh, what if they did, a Tamer series and whatnot. And here we're talking about what, it's been like 21 years since that one went off the air too.
Yeah.
At this point, Tamers was such a great story and such a great story from start to finish. I don't really want them to tackle Tamers more at this point. I don't think there's anything that you can do to improve on where you already left. That's kind of like one of the rare instances where you should probably just leave that one alone, because there's really nothing you can do to up that game. And then you're like, okay, so what other Digimon series can we focus on in the future? Because Frontier, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. Frontier is so bad. Like, there's nothing but up. You can go for Frontier with a fresh no face on that one, but at the same time you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how many people out there are truly looking for a Frontier reboot at this point, right? So you have to ask kind of that question and see if it's even worth it. You still have Digimon Savers, which to me is kind of the most underrated Digimon series like to exist, because it was actually a pretty good series from start to finish there, but it just didn't have the popularity, or it didn't really catch on like all the other series did. So it's kind of the more forgotten Digimon series, but it's actually still pretty good. So you can always do something with that if you want to. Zero Wars, I'm not sure how many people really care about that whole thing. I just remember there being like a multiverse team up at some point during that whole series. And then of course you have series like Ghost Game, which was just a complete another waste of time for 65 episodes. And I don't even know if there is like a new Digimon series that is coming out that's kind of like fresh set from the other ones.
It's about the trading card game. It's Digimon Liberators. It's a short web series. The third one just came out last week.
I'm pretty sure you're a bigger fan of the card series than I am. So I want you and Nerdigans to remind me of this, because I feel like this whole thing got memory hold, and I'm positive that this was so. Magnamon, who was the golden digi egg for Davis and Vmon, right? We saw it in like the movie. I could have swore when that Digimon first came out that was a champion level Digimon. I even remember there being a Digimon card showing that it was a champion level, and then somewhere in the last 10-20 years it got retconned to be a mega level again. And I think because they realized, well, if this character is supposed to be a royal knight, there's no way that we can have this Digimon be a champion level. So I feel like that retcon and the retcon of Malomyotismon both happened somewhere in like the 2000s, where I remember them being a much lower power level than like beforehand. Yeah, I definitely did not forget about Ghost Game, but I remember that being like a big thing like years ago. And it's like, did they just change that, or am I just like falsely remembering them being a much lower power level than before? Do you recall that whole thing, Nerdigans? I know Biggles is probably trying to look at his card collection right now.
I know, I remember us talking about it, but I think Biggles probably has it because he has his card collection. But I do want to mention, because we've talked about this in regards to Tamers. Tamers, I think if you had like a tri-style series for Tamers, I think it would work. It has to be, no, you don't need a reboot for Tamers. Just do a sequel style tri-series for Tamers. It'd work. For O2, O2 needs a tri-series. That is one that needs a tri-series bad, because you need to address those plot holes and all that. But if that's the one, those O2 needs a tri-series, and Tamers, that's an optional thing. It'd be nice to have, but that's an optional thing. But Frontiers, that just needs a full-on reboot. Like, that's the series. If you want to reboot a series from scratch, that would be the one to do it.
Magnamon's still a champion,
Really?
but he's in armored form. So yeah, Magnamon is still a champion.
So he is, because I thought they reconned him to Mega not too long ago. That's where I was kind of like, well, when did the retcon to Mega happen? Because I do remember him being a champion at one point.
Yeah, he's still a champion.
Yeah, that's bad. And then we can probably do a deep dive on that one in a whole another episode. Because I remember there's been like several adjusted retcon power levels over the last several years too. But like I said, for me, I think that if you're not going to try to do something completely new and fresh again, and let's be honest, the last time they did that, it was Ghost Game, and that was not great. I think Savers probably has the most potential for a series. I retcon series. Like I said, I just at this point. You've done all you could possibly do with Adventure.
Adventure's done.
Adventure, yeah. You can't do any more. You can't do anything more with Adventure at this point. Tamers, like I said, Tamers is just too good. Like I just wouldn't touch that one again. And unless you just want to do full redemption of Frontier, I think Savers is probably your best shot at any kind of like rebooted series. Well, with Digimon here.
Well, it sounds.
What is it? Go ahead.
It sounds like O2 is going to get like the reboot treatment, though, based on what Biggles is saying. But I just would rather have a tri-style midquel for O2, in my opinion. I just think that would work better.
Yeah, it'll probably be for the best if we're going to be completely honest with ourselves here. But yeah, so if I had to give a grade to this film here, I will say this. It's certainly not the worst Digimon like series that I've seen. Is certainly not the worst movie that's out there. I just think that this movie, its biggest failure is that it doesn't meet the expectations that a lot of people have with the Adventure 2 kids and the Adventure 2 saga up to this point. So if you're like a major Digimon like O2 fan, you're trying to check this out and you're trying to be like, okay, maybe I'll finally get the answers to so many questions that I had here. You're just not going to get them. Like that's not the purpose of this film like at all. And on that level, I would probably say that this film misses the mark as a standalone movie, like in and of itself. I mean, like I said, there's definitely a good character development arc here with Louis. I'm not going to say that they did a bad job with him. I think they did do a good job. I just think it was the wrong place to do it here with. So there's things to like, there's things to not like. I'm floating right now somewhere between a 2.5 to a 3 out of 5 with this movie, if I'm being completely fair and objective with you. Do you agree with that one, Nerdigans, or what do you think about the rating for this film?
If we're talking about a standalone film and not to like just taking like the O2 kids out of it, I would say I would lean more towards a 2 because Last Kazuna was just, as a standalone film, Last Kazuna was just a lot better. Last Kazuna really hit you emotionally. Last Kazuna is definitely like more out of 3. But if we're talking about just like what I was expecting from an O2 movie, it's definitely more so like on a 1.5 for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as a standalone, especially like comparing it to Last Kazuna, it's definitely a 2.
All right. Biggles, I know you're not a professional reviewer of movies because you certainly don't have a channel that talks about stuff like that on here. Definitely not on the YouTubes. But what would you give this film rating based on your expectation?
Well, I was super excited for it, and if it's based on how excited I was for it and how happy I was after it, probably like a 1, if that. It just felt like none of the characters had a purpose in this movie. I did like the animation. I thought that was kind of cool. Some of the fighting was fun. And I didn't care about the main character because he wasn't a character in the O2 group that I actually cared about. So for me, it wasn't good. It's like middle of the pack, like as a movie, because like if you don't care about the other characters, you get the story of this kid who got the crap kicked out of him, and it was an 8-year misunderstanding that was never talked about, never solved. So it's like one of those anime tropes where, it's a misunderstanding, and like 130 chapters later, in like the manga, it's finally done. So this felt like it was just, yeah. So I didn't feel like it was very good story-wise as well. So it's still better than stuff that's coming out of Disney.
Oh, I mean that's a whole other conversation. I mean, at least no Yoli didn't do like some kind of like pagan rap ritual with like an afro talking about how bad the fan base is. Because that's I think that's a positive note.
You didn't have any mansplaining.
Yeah, so I'll give Digimon credit in that aspect here, but I don't know. I think, like I said, with a series here that has been around for 25 years, I think that the one flaw with Digimon that I think needs to be addressed is that at this point in the game, if you're going to go in with these projects, you have to have a better understanding of your fan base and what your fan base wants. Because I think maybe the idea here is just like, hey, let's just do another O2 movie and like bring back those guys for a completely separate adventure, not understanding that, hey, I think a lot of your fan base who do like O2 will like some of the questions addressed from other previous movies and series that kind of left things just completely in the open for interpretation, and they want some answers to some of these questions, and they're not going to get them just by watching this movie based on a character that no one really has seen before, probably really cares about. It's like, I'm not saying that, the idea is just, let's just do another O2 movie. I don't think they understand that that's not really what their fan base wants at this point. Like, their fan base kind of wants there to be some kind of closure or conclusion based on other things that have happened here. Like I said before here, the only closed door argument that we had is like, 25 years in the future, everyone's married and they're adults and someone's running around with a noodle cart and then partner Digimon everyone, and then it's all over. And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to go back and kind of fix that because that one didn't go over too well. So we'll kind of throw in little hints to other series about this whole group, but not really fully explain like what happened or like why it was this even a thing. Like I said, if you're watching this expecting to realize, okay, how did the O2 cast get kidnapped for the entirety of Digimon Tri, and then like you're not going to get any answers out of that. You're not going to get any answers out of, well, if the 22 reboot just completely takes out Davis and Ken like all together, it's like, are they no longer like canon in Digimon anymore? You're not going to really get an answer out of that. There's just too many questions that were completely unanswered. Even in its own series, there's a whole lot of questions that weren't answered. So I don't know. I think they need to do a much better job of understanding exactly what their fan base wants and deliver based on that. And maybe you'll get a much better result here with this
I
film.
think what they need to make clear is if this is like a standalone movie or if this is canon to the series.
Yeah.
Because Last Kizuna, it's really obvious that it's a standalone movie, especially if you've watched Try, you know that it is a standalone movie. Based on especially the ending of this movie, yeah, you know it's a standalone movie. There's no way it's canon.
Yep. And I think that's kind of what we're missing right now. So, like I said, I know that, like I said, Biggles, you mentioned that there's a new animated series based on the card game, which it's weird because, like, obviously the Digimon card game never really picked up as well as the Pokemon card game for the obvious reasons. But I know, like, Digimon, like, outside of the television series, there was always the card game, and then there was the video games, which is like kind of like the RPG style video games as well. And I feel like the video games were always more successful than the card game itself. Maybe that's just from my perspective as someone who never really like was into that realm. Is that a fair take?
So they rebooted the card game. So the card game in Japan was different than the one that they released in America, like the original ones. I have those cards somewhere in my other room. But that card game lasted like 2 years. This one dropped with the new thing. It's been going 4 years. This movie ended up getting some new Imperialdramon cards, so my deck is even stronger now thanks to that. So thank you for this movie. That's the good thing out of this movie. And it's already in like BT 17, so it's had like 20 packs already, 22 packs already. So the card game's actually really popular. It's probably the second most fun card game to play out of One Piece is currently king because it's the fastest, and it's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you have to sit for 20 minutes to watch them do their one turn, and then you take 20 minutes to do your turn. But the video games were probably way better early on, and recently they just kind of they just had a visual novel where it wasn't that good. Digimon Survive, it wasn't that great. They just re-released like New Order or something like that, which was supposed to be a follow-up to the old Digimon World games, and it's not as good as the PlayStation 1 Digimon world, so it was really disappointed. But they did update like the MMO that came out in like 2012 or something like that, and the new update makes that game kind of fun. So right now, I think the card game is doing a lot better than the video games, other than Cyber Sleuth. So
I heard Cyber Sleuth was very mixed.
Yeah, it was pretty good. You're like doing a mystery, but if you took like the wrong set of Digimon into a certain area, you basically had to restart and do it again.
Awesome.
But it was probably the best game they've had for a while.
Well, so I'll say this, I definitely want to see if we can get another animated movie here in the future for us, because I'm not sure if you guys have been following this kind of like the normie movie world right now. It's not been a great year for films so far. However, it does feel like the next few weeks are going to get a lot better as far as like actual movies, because we did watch the Bike Riders, I should say. The Bike Riders, we'll review that one on Tuesday in the Barroom Podcast. We have the Horizon, the American Saga coming out next week. We also have Maxine that's coming out in a couple of weeks too. So hopefully these films start getting a lot better, because for the first 6 months they have been absolutely abysmal, and it's been hard to be a fan of movies for the last few months, but hopefully we can turn that around. But with that said, I would like to go ahead and thank you guys for joining me for this very special episode of Digimon here, and hopefully we'll have more Digimon stuff to talk about in the future, because like I said, I am working on cooking up some stuff for Retro Rave in the future, so we can also talk about a lot more stuff within Digimon anime. Maybe we'll talk about Yu-Gi-Oh, because I mentioned this many times before. I'm not sure you guys are Yu-Gi-Oh fans, but I remember like the last time I watched an episode, I think it was like Yami versus Bakura, it was Malik, and I think that was like the last time I saw Yu-Gi-Oh episode. It didn't find out till quite literally 7 years later that apparently Yami had a final battle with Bakura, and I was like, when the hell did this happen? Because I remember I stopped watching this like a long time. Was this like before or after like the motorcycle series? I feel like
it was before. So what happened was they had Battle City, and then during Battle City, they had to do this weird arc with Kaiba's little brother, Noah, and then they went back to Battle City, and then there was the Seal of Orichalcos, and that's when people were like, no, fuck this. They changed Mai's voice actor. She sounds like a dude now. So most people dropped there. And then there was, after that finished, there was like a 5th season or whatever, and like he fights Bakura. They go back to ancient Egypt, and then like Yugi and Yami have a final battle to see who gets the thing, and that's where you get like the like cotton ball little fuckers. I have one of their cards here. I just don't remember what they're called, and I don't care.
Yeah, so we're probably gonna have to do an episode about this. Like I said, I feel like that entire like portion of Yu-Gi-Oh got completely memory holed out of my existence, like entirely. I don't know if that was around.
Yeah, the final season, Dawn of the Duel, is so good. I love that season.
Karibo. And then I was like watching another episode of like Yu-Gi-Oh fairly recently, and I thought it was like the 3 Egyptian god monsters, but apparently they're like updated versions. The whole thing's confusing now. We'll talk about Yu-Gi-Oh on another episode, but outside of that, I want to go ahead and give you guys a chance to promote anything that you guys got coming up, working on your show. I'm gonna go ahead and start with our good buddy Biggles here. Gonna give him the big serve. I was gonna ask you at one point, is that not a green screen? Is that actually your setup back over there? And it's like, no, it's not. That's kind of disappointing.
Well, you want to know what's funny? I can do that once I move at the end of the year. I could set up a little thing and basically have an entire card shop, because I do have that many cards, because I've been collecting cards since I was 8, so like a long time ago. So I have more cards than this, but I have to wait till I move. So I basically talk about anime. So talking about Digimon, I've done that before on my channel. I like to talk about anime and things I like. I play video games. It's basically the same thing as the one in the chat, minus the underscore, and that's it. I have a show on Monday that I don't always do. The second week of Monday, or the second Monday, is when I do the like big show where I prepare. But other than that, Mondays are iffy. because I just get so busy that I don't always do stuff. So I try to get more content out. I'll do I'll do better in the future. So go ahead and subscribe if you're not.
All right. Speaking of subscribing for stuff in the future, maybe not. Good Buddy Nerdigans is joining us here. You got a spotlight going on in there. It looks like you're being blinded by the spirit bomb of Digimon right now.
Hot. I don't want to turn on my light. I'm dying.
You do know they have like window ACs, right? Like those are a thing.
I do not want to. Do you realize how much money that costs electricity wise?
Well, I guess you're just gonna have to swelter then.
My roommates on letting me use the AC. I gotta do this. But anyways, you can watch my anime and manga content on my YouTube channel, Nerdigans Inc. And I actually have some content that was just released on Bounding Into Comics website covering Gachi Yakuda and Cells at Work's live action for Cells at Work and anime for Gachi Yakuda. I'm working on an article for Suicide Squad Isekai's new opening theme that came out. Oh my god, it's so good. So good. It's very it's like Cowboy Bebop. It's very much like Cowboy Bebop. It's fantastic. And I'm working on the anime list for this upcoming summer anime season, which starts next month. Well, technically June 27th because Suicide Squad Isekai comes out June 27th. You can follow me on Twitter, which is right there, where I am causing a lot of chaos apparently. And I will try and join Barroom next week. And I am on Bounding's 01 podcast every Wednesday.
All right. Letting you guys know what I got coming up here. Speaking of Bounding Into Comics, I have my Bike Riders review that is up there on the YouTube channel. My review for Latency will be up on Monday, so I got a couple of video reviews coming up for that one. Written reviews will be up as well. This coming Sunday will be the next episode of the Bible Lens podcast. We'll be talking about modern day Moloch worship, and that will be a great topic for Sunday's episode. Tuesday, we're back with the Barroom podcast. We're going to do a full review of the Bike Riders on Tuesday, and a few other topics is that as well. The next Friday night, we will be back here for another episode of the Friday Night Movie Club, because we do have the next Quiet Place prequel, and we have the Horizon, the American Saga movie next week too. So we'll be getting back into the swing of things of movies. Like I said, we just taking a little bit of a break here the last few weeks, because let's be completely honest, the movies just have not been very good, and I decided we'll give Rob and Rick a little bit of a break from watching bad movies for a little bit. But it does seem like things are picking up now, so we're going to be watching that. Shout out to Eddy Brock, who was here earlier. He had to drop out a little bit earlier today, but thank you for joining us on his show. Thanks for Thomas for joining us today, Vanya joining us, DK, Cactus Jones, Spencer. Who else do I have on here? There's one more person. I think that's all who joined us here tonight. Thank you for joining us on another Friday night. Hopefully we will see you guys on Sunday. If not Sunday, we'll see you on Tuesday. If not, we'll see you next week here on the show. We're going to sign off here with our super special, awesome outro. Adios, goodbye, and good night. It is hot. It is very, very hot. Like, it's like 95 degrees out here. It makes no sense.
It's over. Go home.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Okay.
Get out! Get out! You get the hell out!
Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch.